legitimate demand for the review of the 18,000 minimum wage is born out of the current reality of high cost of living, free fall of the naira, and high cost of goods and services. The minimum wage of 125 naira was equivalent then to $200. As we speak today, the 18,000 minimum wage is actually less than $50. And therefore, both in quantum and what it can be able to do for Nigerian workers going forward is that this demand is both legitimate and therefore legal.
You know, when it comes to the figures, that is when you drive the point to the minds of those. Because for an average worker, when you're talking about living wage, minimum wage, what the wage is going to be, he's just waiting for you to mention an amount. And then you see him react. You know,
and to
that
think
figure.
that in Nigeria, there was a time when the naira almost had the same value, if not
there was. It was higher in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then in the early 80s, they were at par before, you know, the dollar started gaining more ground.
Until after the structural adjustment program.
And then SAP was
really
the final...
everything.
Sapped everything away.
Sharon Ijason's been, you know, just giggling away there. It's good to have you on the show this morning. Okay, so we've heard from the SGF, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, that this new minimum wage that is still a mystery will actually be, let me just quote him here. It says it will meet economic realities.
Well, that's a political talk. We'll just wait for...
we'll just the wind out of my sail right there.
We'll just wait for the tripartite committee to meet, because the Minister of Labour says that the new minimum wage will be implemented from September, which is the third quarter. But from my knowledge, the tripartite committee has actually not met more than once or twice. So I wouldn't know what miracle will be perfect. Or would it be that the federal government will just come and say, okay, you guys have given us 56,000 naira, I'm going to sign it. Because, but from my questioning, when I questioned the Labour leaders, there was never a time that a new minimum wage just came on a platter of gold. You have to fight for it. So this might be probably the breaking news. Maybe the federal government will just come, okay, NLC, you propose 56,000. Because if that is not going to be done, I don't know how they are going to achieve a new minimum wage by September.
Are you hearing anything as to the direction that government could go, or what they could come out with from this magic bag?
Well, you know,
minimum wage. Well, so are they going to be meeting Labour halfway?
When politicians speak, we just have to actually wait and let time pass over it. Because the reality is, the tripartite committee have just met probably just once or twice. So the discussion has not actually started as far as I'm concerned. And I've told you that the magic that can happen is if the federal government comes and just okays, which I doubt, because we have the governors on board that will tell you that they are not yet, they've not been able to pay the 18,000 naira minimum wage. So this is where the questions start, because we have so many states that are owing workers' salaries.
This tripartite committee you talk about, they have not met more than once or twice.
Yes.
Who has the powers to make them meet? And who is delaying their, or who is making them not to meet, as the case may be?
Well, that would be their own question to answer. But we definitely know that it takes the government, it takes the employers of Labour, and it also takes Labour to come together to actually meet. And I'm definitely sure that they will find a middle ground. But the truth remains that we have to face the realities on ground. And at the NLC at 40 meeting, when several lecturers came to enlighten workers on the movement, what was said is the minimum wage fine has to be reviewed, but there's something that we workers actually have to do, which is ensuring that we are involved in the politics of the country, ensuring that we are part of the process, ensuring that we are part of the policy that our government actually... Yes, it's very important, because we could have a living wage, but when we have a living wage, if we're not part of the politics and the policies, it will definitely come back to us and affect us.
Talking about being part of the politics, there was a party, the Labour Party, from what we, at least a few years ago, that we, it was largely a product of the Labour movement, and they were able to secure a state, and then they lost it eventually.
Well,
so when it comes to being part of the politics, if I remember at the 40th year event anniversary that you were there, the former president of NLC, Adams Oshomole, was talking about, emphasized on that you need to seize power to be able to implement all the things that you want.
Yes.
Well, the truth remains that looking at NLC at 40, you just have to reiterate that there are success stories and there are also some stories that actually have failed. They've accepted that the Nigerian and the Labour Party, the reason why it was registered actually has not been achieved. It's now like a dumping ground. But it's now for workers to come together once again and allow people understand the fact that the Labour Party is worker-driven, member-driven, and it's going to stand as the voice of the people. Because according to the lecturers who delivered their lectures, there's no way that we'll have change if Nigerian workers are not active when it comes to politics.
But when we talk about a Labour Party, is it not just a case of nomenclature? I mean, you could have a party called Labour Party, but not necessarily peopled by, workers and,
well,
and what have you.
That was the excuse. That was the excuse some of the Labour leaders actually gave. That's why probably they were not in charge of the Labour Party, because they.
But who's going to hand it over to them? Really?
But it was muted. The Labour movement were part of the whole thing, except at the end, along the line, it was hijacked. It was hijacked by the politicians who were not members of Labour, who had nothing to do with Labour.
Because they felt that the party would actually thrive more if it's seen as a people's party, whereby everybody is involved and not just workers. But this is the orientation that they've received, and moving forward, they're looking forward to a new party whereby it will be workers-driven, and everybody understand the fact that as workers, we actually have to be active politically.
But talk to us about this tripartite committee. I mean, what exactly are their terms of reference, apart from the issue of minimum wage? What else are they, looking at changing?
It's just about the welfare of workers, but we know that the APC governors actually met on restructuring. The APC members restructuring committee, the APC restructuring committee. They actually met, and the challenge they came up with a recommendation that the national minimum wage should be moved from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. That means it's not going to be a national minimum wage again, but a state minimum wage. But I've also said it before that Nigeria, we operate a federation, and the United States of America, for example, also operate a more federal system. And it works, and they have a national minimum wage. And we're also part of so many international labor organizations, whereby there are standards of which you operate when it comes to handling workers' welfare. So now, the APC APC Restructuring Committee actually came up with a recommendation that it should not be a national. That's because some state governors don't want to pay minimum wage. As I speak, there's still some state governors that pay less than 18,000 naira minimum wage.
And there's still a few, a couple, who pay about 25?
Yes, that pay more.
Yeah,
much more than that. So the issue now is that we have to ensure that we know the kind of leaders we have. And also the Nigerian Labour Congress actually have to be up on their toes to actually ensure that they educate their workers and also educate the governors when it comes to issues like, because most of these governors are not actually worker friendly. Most of these governors don't even know the standard of which to operate when it comes to managing the affairs of workers. So it's actually of utmost importance that we keep telling the story of how important it is for us to be on a national page so that no worker is left behind when it comes to their welfare.
The NLC right now, is it a weakened organization? I mean, if you look at the 40-year life of, you just laughed there, of the NLC, I mean, they just celebrated NLC at 40. Would you say that it's become a more weakened organization? Especially looking at all the attempts to actually
I will be honest with you.
The NLC, now you have ULC, you have this.
I'll be honest with you.
Yes.
During the meeting at NLC at 40, I had the opportunity of meeting almost all the past presidents of NLC and probably the General Secretary. It's a success story, of course, but there are also failures. Answering your question as regards if NLC is a weakened body, the truth remains that I've observed and what I learned from the founding fathers of the union, that knowledge is power. And one thing we have to, that I actually came back with is that the moment we have labor leaders who are more knowledgeable about the history of Nigerian politics, the history of the Nigerian Labour Congress, the moment we have people that are not scared of probably being thrown into the cell or prison to stand up for people's rights, that moment is when we'll have a more vibrant labour sector.
Labour leaders that can give it all it takes.
I'm telling you, and knowledge is power. When you want to fight with government, you don't fight with government based on emotions. You fight with them with facts and figures, and they listen to you.
Yes, you were at the 40th anniversary of the Labour movement and in Abuja with all the ceremony. We had a guest here last week who was saying that the NLC and the Labour movement have to or need to move beyond the request for money, minimum wage, increment of monies, and move further.
And fighting fuel scarcity increment.
Now, talk to us, was there any agenda that the NLC is setting for itself to say we need to move beyond what the running of calling for minimum wage here and there, you know, and so on? Okay,
my answer to that is, aside the Nigerian Labour Congress, to have a vibrant labour sector is not just about NLC, it's about TUC, it's about true active civil society groups, not society groups that will come out to for praise singing of probably one government, but people that would actually set agenda to and support the bigger body, which might be NLC. Now, looking at NLC at 40, when it comes to agenda setting, they've actually enlightened themselves as regards policy making. I've said this earlier on. It's very important, and I'm sure it's important to them, that they have to be part of the process. And you know, when I told you what I learned is knowledge is power. When you're knowledgeable about an issue, you know how to fight. You don't just go and meet the president and say, I feel like. It's about, okay, this is the research I've done. In America, this is how they've done it. In Europe, this is how they've done it. And we in Nigeria, okay, there's a policy that you want to run, and I feel it's not going to work in our system. We've actually gone, and that reminds me, a body like ASU should not be taken for granted because they have lots of knowledge. And the moment you bring them more into the labor system, the moment you bring them to enlighten themselves from time to time, it will help the labor movement.
What I'm reading from what you're saying is the labor movement, whether it's the ASU, NASU, SANU, NLC, they don't seem to be working in tandem. Looking at the NLC itself, there seems to be some cracks. You have the ULC, that's yet to be recognized by government, and all of. Is that what is causing the seeming weakness?
Well, that is an issue. The unity of labor is key. But if I'm to complete what I was saying before, the truth remains that NLC is a bigger body. Each union actually have their own leadership, which they respect.
So there are affiliates too.
You understand? So it's very important that they work together as one, whereby you don't have much knowledge about an issue, you consult other affiliates to advise, and you form a strong team and make a case. One of the former presidents of NLC, Alhaji Sumonu, actually told me that he spoke about so many policies that the government wanted to take when they wanted to collect loan from the World Bank, and how they single-handedly did their research because they had knowledge, invited most of their members, and they printed out a leaflet and started distributing it to Nigeria. Nigeria is not for sale. And it worked because it's based on knowledge and fact and research. So the moment you don't have knowledge, there's no way you'll fight the government because the government is busy doing so many things. Going back to the unity of labor, the fact remains that the government will be happy because, okay, Ayuba Waba has to be strong and has to smile with everybody because he wants to ensure that his opponent doesn't overtake him when it comes to issues. So the truth remains that ULC actually and NLC actually have to come together as one to fight for the workers, because if workers are to enjoy a good welfare, when it comes to collective bargaining, they actually have to work together as one to achieve results. If you look at the Joe Ajaero group, they are strong when it comes to the economy. They can hold the economy to ransom. Then when you look at NLC, they have the numbers. So if they come together as a force,
to ransom how is that even a good thing?
It's not
at the end of the day, isn't it counterproductive when the economy shuts down, when you calculate the cost to the nation and what the economy loses, and even
what the members lose at that time, because if the economy is not working, you don't make profit. If there's no profit, you don't make money.
We know that in our own government, if we don't go on strike, most times we don't get
the government
results.
Doesn't listen to you.
And added to that, there's a general impression, at least on you know, in some sector, that the leadership of Labour seems to have been compromised somewhat.
Well, and the truth is, I wouldn't want to vouch. I wouldn't want to vouch for anyone, but the truth remains that most times it's just an impression. You know, when you have a strong force, there's a way you can fight and even get results. But when you're not strong enough, when there's no unity, the government knows that they have nothing to lose.
And they take advantage
of it. So they're taking advantage. You really don't need to actually even be corrupt. You don't, you don't have to make them corrupt to even get results. It's just about being intelligent enough.
Taking advantage has to do with somebody must be compromised somewhere for the government to succeed in taking advantage. The divide and rule process. But however, we thank you, Sharon Jackson, for joining us on the program now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.